Today we're going to talk about Sage, because Sage received maybe kind of a big buff, maybe? We'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. It's patch 11.04, and, well, Abyss is back and Icebox is out. We knew that that was coming. Hallelujah, thank God. Icebox is gone, never bring it back. If you're wondering for pro play, Icebox will be out for champs, and Abyss will be in, but for playoffs, not so much. But here we go. First, let's talk about Chamber a little bit, though, because Chamber had already received this buff in 11.2 by accident, but it's that the range restriction on the trademark had been removed, and I do think this is worth talking about in general, right? This getting rid of the trademark range restriction is something that a lot of people have wanted for a long time, and I think is a pretty significant buff, right? Particularly on maps like Bind or whatever, you know, being able to put a trademark on one side and have your Chamber set up, you know, aggressively on the other side could be very, very strong. Right? Not just on Bind, but on quite a few maps could be quite strong. And so I do really think that that is a significant buff for Chamber, and you might see a bit more Chamber in champs overall. I also think it's a good counter. Chamber in general is a pretty good counter to Viper, and we are seeing, you know, quite a bit of Viper on quite a few maps right now as well. Like, could you see, you know, for instance, you know, a Chamber on a Haven to counter that Viper wall against a team that plays Viper? Maybe, right? It's possible. So I do think that that is a pretty significant buff, but I do want to talk about Sage, because I was surprised to see this change for Sage, to be honest. We're leaning into Sage's identity as a controller, leaning Sentinel hybrid by allowing it to control sprays from further. So the Sage wall cast range has increased by 10 to 15 meters, and the resurrection range has increased from 6 to 12 meters. Now let me just quickly talk about the res side of this first. We're going to just take a look at a video here from your boy Kanga, who's going to just show us what it looks like. So here you go. That's the difference, right? So before, pretty close. Now you can be quite far away, right? 12 meters is quite far in this game. So that is a, you know, fairly significant difference there, right? Like, will this always matter? I don't think so, right? Because you often, you know, don't want to just res someone, you know, out completely on their own, you know, with no one around them. So I'm not sure that this will always matter, right? I would say in most cases it probably won't. But there will be some, you know, case scenarios where you will find that range increase, you know, quite useful. So that obviously is just kind of a buff. But I do want to focus more on here is this other change of the wall, because I do think that the wall change could be fairly significant. Now, for those of you who don't know, Sage, particularly on Icebox, has had a bit of a resurrection in general. Ha, good pun, Sage pun, ha. But in general, basically, a lot of teams are playing Sage now on Icebox, and you are seeing a lot of that agent. And we've basically gone back to 2021 in terms of Icebox comps. And so Sage's pick rate on Icebox, you know, across, you know, a decent amount of regions has been fairly high, and I would suspect if Icebox was staying in the pool, most of those teams are finding quite a lot of success just playing Sage and going back to kind of what worked back in 2021 as well, right? Which just shows what a terrible map Icebox is, that we've gone back in time to 2021, and it turns out that they had the best ideas. If the best ideas on a map were formed in 2021, it probably is a terrible map. But Sage is basically getting played on Icebox a lot and is playing pretty well there. And weirdly enough, Icebox is one of those maps that I think this buff with the wall would be absolutely giga significant on. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, Icebox is rotating out, which obviously is very bad for Sage. However, what you will tend to find with agents is, if they start getting a bit of play on one map, people start to go, huh, maybe this agent isn't so bad. You know, maybe let's try it on a different map. And then particularly, that is also comboed when an agent gets buffed. People tend to think, huh, maybe this agent isn't so bad. Maybe let's try it on a couple maps. And both of those things have essentially happened to Sage in the same sort of time span here. And so would it shock me if maybe we got a few Sage picks on some other maps as well? Who knows? And coming into game, I think you can see that this Sage buff, you can very much see some examples where this could be pretty big, right? I'm just going to take you here on Lotus, but there will be quite a few examples on quite a few different maps I would have thought here as well, right? But let's just say we want to go B with our Sage on Lotus, which if you're playing Sage, you probably do want to end B a decent amount of time anyway, right? And let's say that, you know, we've made a bit of noise and they've smoked this off. Well, let's say they have smoked this off. Well, if I sit inside this smoke, I can get a Sage wall off, you know, across here like that from back here now. So I don't even have to swing out to the site at all to get a Sage wall up on this site, right? And then we can plant the spike. So I don't even need... So, and again, if you think about, like, maybe we're playing solo Omen or something, right? We're playing solo smokes. We can then just smoke this and this off. right? So we can get all the smokes we potentially need as well, right? And just create like a bit of a wall in here and get the spike down, right? And if you wanted to play something really, really cringe, you know, and just like, I'm going to wall this, I'm going to smoke there, I'm going to smoke there, I'm going to get the spike down, and then we're just going to, you know, play back here, and you've got, you know, Killjoy mollies or whatever else, and I've got Sage slows for this and Sage slows for that, right? Like, all of a sudden, you can start to picture why this might be, you know, pretty significant, because getting a wall like off that from a safe spot, not having to cross this line first, is basically saving me a smoke here, right? I mean, you can imagine, I mean, you'll often see defenders, you know, just like jiggle picking this with a knife, you know, doing that. Well, all of a sudden, they might end up with a Sage wall in their face, right? That's the kind of thing that you might see every so often, and that is quite significant. And that's just one example of B-site Lotus, but I'm sure if you went across every single map, you could find a lot more examples of that kind of thing, right? Whether it's, you know, I don't know, doing it from like back here, right? Like being like super safe out here. I mean, even you might even be able to do it kind of behind this wall and just like, yeah, just kind of like jiggle peek, like, let's go, right? And away we go. You know, it could be all sorts of things. I mean, even one doing it for stairs as well. I mean, you can probably get it, yeah, from like back here onto stairs. I'm sure you can, right? Getting a wall that, again, like you don't have to like be, you know, up here potentially like someone there can see me doing this wall. Like, no, I'm able to do it from, you know, a super safe spot instead. And now let's go A. Right, and these are just some examples, right? I think particularly that B Lotus one is quite significant, but I'm sure on other maps, if you went there, you'll be able to find loads, right? I'm just giving you an example. Now, defense side, there will be some instances where you will be able, you know, to be in certain positions and be able to wall something off, right? Like imagine you're jiggle peeking this and they're coming towards A, and then you can just do that, right? Whereas before, you wouldn't be able to have done that, right? And then you're getting ready for a slow in case they come to the door, and all of a sudden, I'm Sage, and I'm feeling so impactful right now. These are the kind of things that you haven't really been able to do before, but could be super, super impactful in a game, particularly at high-level games where, you know, surviving is going to be the name of the game a lot of the time, and you're able to stay in a safe spot, because one of the things you would often get, particularly against, you know, a Jet or anyone who had access to kind of, you know, some height mobility, is that you would put down a Sage wall and they would come over the top of it and, you know, maybe dash on you, and you'd be, you know, you'd have to be like right by the wall, so you'd have to be pretty close to it, and you can't escape that, right? Whereas now, assume I'm playing against a Jet, and again, this doesn't have to be on Lotus, but, you know, it could be on any map. Assume I am doing this in a certain position, right? And I'm playing against a Jet and they try and, you know, updraft dash on me. Well, I mean, I've still got cover to play into. I'm in a safe spot. I mean, I can probably track you as you're landing and kill you pretty easily. So I do think this is a pretty significant buff, right? I mean, we can try this on C-site as well here on Lotus as maybe an example of like, you know, I could be playing back here now, right? So again, like I'm playing back here with my wall, and it's like, oh, seen them, wall, right? That is something meaningful, right? That's meaningful, because before as Sage, you were having to play here, right? You were playing like here instead, you know, getting your wall like ready to do this. Well, if you time it wrong and the neon slides in here or raise satchels in here, you die. But that's not going to happen anymore, because you play in much safer spots, as I just said, right? Where that Duelist isn't going to get you. So I do think that this is a pretty significant buff for Sage. And I also think that it's a little strange. The reason I say it's a little bit strange is because some of the other changes that we've seen them make to other agents, right? Most notably, I'm coming back here to patch 11.0, where they changed agents like Phoenix and Reyna and nerfed them, right? So the Reyna Leah just got nerfed, the Phoenix Curveball just got nerfed, and that made me think that Riot was very much going in a direction of like, we recognize that some agents are just for ranked. And I would have put Sage in that category, but it seems like they've very much gone with the opposite approach of, no, we want people to play this agent in high-level pro play as well. And that I think is quite interesting, because I would have assumed that Sage is a ranked agent, but apparently not anymore.